Welcome, Chosen X. You arrive not in applause but in a hush that rearranged the air. The world, which had learned to measure you in borrowed frames, found its instruments inaccurate. What ruptured was not merely habit but the architecture that had fixed your edges. Where once you fit the narrow outlines, now there is a widening, as though a room learned to become a horizon. You were not slightly altered, you were returned to a longitude with no map named. In the hours after the break you will discover that silence is no empty vessel. It contains direction. It holds a worn map where ink glows beneath your fingers. Your breath meets this new field and discovers cadence. You will feel impulses that refuse translation into small talk or tidy plans. Those impulses are not cravings for spectacle. They are coordinates. Follow them as if they were stars folded into a palm. People who walked beside you out of habit will mistake your stillness for absence. They will ask why you no longer perpetuate the old rituals that kept them comfortable. Let them ask. Your choices are the undercurrent that loosens their complacency. Do not answer to the demand for your old shape. Your allegiance is to emergence. You will weep alone and not be ashamed. Each drop will excavate a chamber where new light will gather. The tears are not proof of collapse but of clearing. They wash sediment from places that hold seeds. In that fresh loam tiny shoots will thread toward a sun that is not public performance but inner fidelity. Nourish them with patience. Some nights you will find the mirror hostile. It will try to pin you back into the portrait it has kept. When you stand before it, do not plead for the face you once were. Instead, watch patiently as the glass shows truths you had denied. A new profile will be etched by fire and weather. Accept the uninvited contours. They are signatures, not mistakes. There are powers that trade in contracts and predictable transactions. Their language is reassuring. They offered you a ledger in return for smaller dreams. You signed until your handwriting blurred. This unbinding will feel scandalous to them because it breaks the ledger. Yet your liberation is not a rebellion against order, but a reclamation of an order you were always part of. Listen instead for the grain of sound beneath noise. It is a frequency that invites you to move differently. You will find that your steps stop resembling attempts to please and begin to look like cartography. Each footfall sketches terrain in real time. You will walk as if drawing a passageway for others who have lost their compasses. Do not expect victory to be heralded. The first emergence is private. It is a negotiation between spirit and memory, between what must fall away and what must rise. You will feel both loss and arrival at once. Honor that paradox. It signifies authenticity rather than contradiction. Relationships will ask for explanations and old loyalties will seek reinstatement. Some will plead and others will accuse. You will resist the impulse to justify your shape because explanation is often a plea for permission. Your permission came in the fracture. Let silence and steady action be your reply. There will be a time when the places that once contained comfort will feel like costumes. You may find yourself removing garments of ease not to shock but to breathe. The empty space where they hung is an altar. Offer there the small bones of expectation. Build on what remains a simple scaffolding of truth. Inevitable tests will appear as invitations to return to smallness. They will present familiar maps with softened edges. When you resist, you will discover that the cost of retreat is higher than the discomfort of advance. Choose the road that makes demands on courage but yields honest growth. Do not confuse humility with erasure. You can carry gentleness and be fierce in devotion. Your quiet does not equal invisibility. It is a way of holding an intensity that knows how to wait and leap. Cultivate that paradox with fidelity. Tonight, as rain or light passes through whatever window remains open, make a covenant with possibility. Name nothing that would trap you inside old calculations. Promise only to answer to that inner authority that does not bargain for comfort. You began as a vessel of many expectations. Now you are a conduit. Do not make the conduit into an exhibit. Let it transmit what it receives without polishing for approval. The work is not to advance an image but to preserve resonance. Enter the next day as one who has remembered how to keep time by stars rather than by clocks. With each quiet choice, the new world forms. You will be surprised by allies who appear and by doors that open because your fidelity left an imprint. Remember this: breaking need not end in ruin. It can precisely reshape you into the center of your calling. Breathe into the adjustment. Stand, stern and tender, and let the slow reassembly begin. Stay vigilant. In the envelope of this new morning you learn the grammar of attention. You notice how small things begin to answer you, how a single unhurried look can rearrange your room. Where noise once claimed the center, nuance now holds court, and you move like someone who has learned to read shadows for meaning. Your senses are tuned not to loudness but to pattern, and what you listen for is the architecture beneath appearance. There are moments when you will feel like a lighthouse whose lamp insists on burning in a fog that others pretend not to see. You will stand patient and bright without seeking applause, and that brightness will create a corridor through which truth arrives. People who expected you to perform familiar roles will fumble for scripts. Let them fumble. Your role has been rewritten by a deeper hand, and the script you follow is measured by resonance rather than approval. Now that the old assurances no longer bind you, desire will take on a different shape. It will be less about filling an absence and more about carving space. You will want room to practice clarity, to let thought settle like sediment before it is spoken. This kind of restraint is not denial. It is a stewardship of voice. Speak only when your words can alter the landscape. You will meet days that ask for radical gentleness. Those days are not weakness disguised as softness. They are tactical tenderness, a way to move through people and places without leaving scavenged pieces of yourself behind. Practice gentleness as an exact discipline. It will not shrink you. It will conserve your center and enlarge the reach of your compassion. As you learn to hold both fierceness and mercy, boundaries will become geometry you trust. The edges of your life will turn from barricades into gates, chosen and tended, responding to what you will protect and what you will allow. Boundaries are the language of stewardship. They tell others what you value by the shape of your consent. There will be nights when old voices return, polished by memory and masquerading as counsel. They will offer familiar comforts with the cost of contraction. Recognize their currency. You can listen without buying. Let gratitude for what you are coexist with a refusal to trade your growth for consensus. Your interior will increasingly act as a magnet. Small objects of grace will cluster near you. A book left open will offer the page you needed. A brief exchange will carry the sentence that unties a knot. Opportunities will not be random coincidences but convergences of attention. Learn to distinguish fluke from calling by checking whether the opening asks you to change in depth rather than adjust on the surface. Trust will be a slow alchemy. Do not rush confessions or commissions. Test the strength of a promise by the patience it asks of you. Authentic alliances are made in seasons, not in single storms. Give time to reveal whether someone is a companion for the pilgrimage or a passenger on a passing train. Your gestures will begin to have a different economy. You will spend less on pleasing and more on presence. A simple arrival will be enough. A single consistent action will speak louder than repeated explanations. Invest in the steady things. They compound into a witness that no argument can refute. Never mistake solitude for exile. Solitude is a laboratory where you refine your perception and recalibrate your compass. There you will meet forms of prayer that are not words but attentions. You will practice listening until the inner voice returns with clearer coordinates. From that place of methodical quiet you will act with a precision that feels like destiny. Expect friction when you refuse compromises that once felt expedient. Some will call your new measures ungrateful. Others will name them fearful. Remember that gratitude for past lessons does not require a reenactment of past limits. You honor what you learned by choosing wisely in present circumstances. When you take a step forward, do so as an artisan approaches a fragile vessel. Move with reverence for the form you are creating. Your hands are tempered by previous breaks and now they work with greater skill. Repair is not a denial of fracture. It is the practice that makes the object able to hold more light. Finally, accept that you are becoming an instrument of attention. Your presence will make certain things audible. Do not clutter that instrument with endless noise. Tune it with discipline and mercy. In time you will notice that the world does not require your explanation to change. It simply adjusts to the fact of your fidelity. Remain patient with the slow work of becoming. Let devotion to truth be your craft, and allow the smallest acts of clarity to accumulate. When the hour asks for proof, offer endurance rather than loud demonstration, and watch how the patient proof of a steady spirit rearranges both chance and history. Carry this: constancy teaches miracles over time, and presence draws the map forward. Now the crucible opens and heat arrives not as punishment but as revelation. You are thrust into an elemental school where flame teaches discrimination and mercy in equal measure. Each ember walks a line between dissolution and discovery, and you learn to trust the contour of burning. The old scales that measured worth fall into ash, and from that fine dust something unnameable begins to consolidate into clarity. You stand at a threshold that does not admit old certainties. What persists is not an answered fear but a deeper logic that refines intent. Pain enters with a grammar that makes you readable to yourself. It is precise and honest, and it refuses to lie by omission. When memory opens for inspection, you find patterns that shaped choices you once thought were only private. You tenderly question those patterns until their bones show, and then you apply heat until what is brittle releases its hold. This process is surgical yet sacred. It pares away the arguments you used to defend a smaller life. Do not imagine that fire simply consumes arbitrarily. It clarifies. It separates alloy from gold and exposes what can hold light. You begin to see who you are when pressure arrives. Your edges either anneal into resilience or they fracture into lessons. Both outcomes are useful. Both outcomes teach how to carry radiance without becoming brittle. You will be called arrogant for refusing to return to old comforts. Others will fear that your courage threatens their assumptions. They will name your resolve as vanity because confession often requires them to answer for their own concessions. Let them name. Their labels do not alter the metallurgy of your becoming. Hold to the calibration of the inner witness rather than public adjudication. There will be moments when solitude intensifies like a kiln and you feel welded to an invisible labor. In those hours, cultivate a quiet devotion that is not performative. Attend the small rituals that anchor you without needing explanation. A measured breath, a slow intake of light, a steady step forward. These are the craftsman's tools. Use them to temper patience into art. Forgiveness will appear as an unexpected flame that warms rather than destroys. When you forgive, you do not give permission to offenses to stand unremarked. You transform their charge into something that can be handled with both firmness and grace. Forgiveness becomes the alchemy that converts past sulfur into fertile loam. You will encounter visions that demand interpretation. Do not rush to narrate them for hungry ears. Allow images to steep until their meanings condense. The impulse to tell too early will scatter the oil that sustains them. Speak when what you say can carry weight and direction, not simply sensation. There is a language the fire speaks that is not loud. It is a sequence of small clarities that accumulate until whole landscapes of meaning shift. You will notice that your decisions begin to require fewer explanations and more integrity. The fewer justifications you offer, the clearer your path becomes. Temper your compassion with discernment. Not every wounded person is meant to become your task, and not every invitation to repair is an assignment from the source you serve. Say yes to what aligns and no to what dilutes. Your refusal will be a form of fidelity to the craft of transformation. Trust that the flames are not random omens but targeted processes. They refine intention and restore proportion. Your hands become steadier because you have handled heat and not flinched. From this steadiness springs the capacity to hold other people without losing form. As the clarifying completes, you will recognize emergent patterns across relationships and places. You will map the paths you can walk without losing center. Some routes will remain closed and some doors will open with quiet invitation. Both are signals from the same source. Finish each day by offering what you have learned into silence. Speak a compact promise to carry forward the insight that arrived under pressure. Do not inflate the moment into legend. Keep it as a practical ledger of small changes that accumulate. Over time, those changes will outmuscle resistance and shape a life that embodies an inner light rather than seeks external notice. Remember that fire does not validate by spectacle. Its approval is a subtle alignment that yields a steady glow. When you move in that glow, you will find your steps more exact and your commitments more attainable. The refining has its own generosity. It gives you capacity to receive what formerly burned you. Hold that generosity with humility and continue the work with deliberate tenderness. Over time, you will see that your clarified presence invites others into the work of their renewal without pressure. Let your light be a corridor of invitation, not a demand for imitation. Stay faithful to this slow crafting of courage and transform ash into ground for fruit. Go on now. When dawn presses against the rim of your new horizon, the world learns to orient around the stillness you carry. You no longer move to fill a room, you alter the room by your presence. Where noise once claimed territory, your quiet creates a gravity that organizes attention. People feel the shift before they name it because silence has become a force, a horizon that redraws the margins of possibility. You practice restraint as skill, not sacrifice. Every unspoken choice is a chord that holds your day. You do not squander speech on explanations. Instead, you calibrate breath and posture, knowing that an uncluttered movement is louder than 100 reasons. Your arrival matters because you bring steadiness others cannot manufacture. Some will mistake composure for indifference. They will test for softness and interpret refusal as pride. Let them misread. Their map is their burden, not yours. Your work is to inhabit the stern and tender edge simultaneously, to be immovable when necessary and yielding when called. This paradox becomes a method, not a mask. In places where gossip carved hollows, you plant pillars of attention. Conversations reframe themselves as people sense the perimeter you embody. They will offer gestures of compliance and then recoil when your compass does not bend. This recoil measures truth. They react to what they arrange to avoid in themselves. Your power is patient firmness. It asks no applause because it is neither performance nor posture. It is a sourced alignment that needs neither explanation nor proof. Doors open not because you demand entry, but because your quiet fidelity invites alignment. Favor arrives as resonance that never exhausts. You learn the art of refusal. Saying no becomes a sacred phrase that preserves bandwidth for creation. Refusal protects a field where growth can germinate. When you refuse from truth, the universe rearranges to provide what aligns rather than settles. There will be seasons when the outer world refuses to mirror your advance. Treat them as slow weathering where depths consolidate. Cultivate patience as an active condition, not passive waiting. 10 small practices that compound into a fortress of attention. A morning vow kept, a promise finished, a discipline held consistently. As steadiness grows, you will attract counsel and challenge. Choose companions by the weight of their questions, not by praise. Companions who ask precise questions are mirrors of progress. Praise that seeks comfort offers anesthesia. Prefer inconvenient mirrors to flattering echoes. Tenderness will be strategic. Being near without surrendering territory provides refuge without creating dependency. The balance between mercy and boundary is an architecture you refine daily. Children needing safety will come for harbor, and adults needing clarity will come for bearings. Conflict will test your axis. When provoked, resist the reflex of reactivity. Reactivity repeats the past. Choose measured responses that honor present stakes. A single precise word can unmake 1,000 anxious sentences. Speak with the economy of one who knows the difference between rhetoric and revelation. Use silence as an instrument in meetings and negotiations. A pause that refuses to be filled coerces clarity from others. People often talk to avoid owning their part. When you hold the quiet truth, sometimes it arrives without fanfare. The truth is rarely pretty, but it is clean, and you can build on clean ground. Do not confuse peace with passivity. Serenity is a field of activity, invisible to those who count only visible motion. You will be doing the work of unmaking false narratives while appearing to rest. This apparent rest will be a pilgrimage into integration. Deep changes rarely make noise. Mark boundaries with ceremony. Rituals teach the community the engineering of your soul. A closed door, a visible refusal, or retraction from places that demand your sacrifice will teach others the stakes of your fidelity. Institutions accustomed to extraction will test limits. When they press, resist logic that asks you to trade essence for access. Stand with the geometry of your values and refuse to be chipped away by slow compromise. Systems reorganize quickly when they encounter immovable boundaries held with kindness. Map influence by depth, not quantity. A single person changed by your example matters more than many temporarily impressed. Invest in durable change and in people who match your patience. Their commitment will mirror yours, and together you will create a corridor that endures beyond trends. Walk into the next season with the dignity of stone and the generosity of a river. Be resolute but not rigid. Bend without breaking, hold without hardening, and let the stillness you cultivate be the vessel through which others learn steadiness. Your presence will be known as a kind of justice that does not demand spectacle. It shows up and rearranges the room by its constancy. Your stillness becomes a compass for lost wanderers. You arrive at the place where the personal becomes communal. Your presence has carved a corridor through time so that slow work now finds passage. In this space you carry both lessons and invitations. Small gestures change in weight because you have learned to carry them with clarity. You do not demand applause, you offer steadiness. Those who watch you will not all understand. Some will squint and recall the person you used to be. Others will feel relief because your constancy makes a place of refuge. You will learn to receive both responses without reshaping yourself. Honor the ones who stay and release the ones who remain bound to the old map. There will be a settling that follows the flame and the silence. Patterns misaligned will peel away and leave a surface that can be watered. Attend rituals of daily fidelity rather than grand proofs. Plant small practices in morning light and guard them with a learned patience. These practices convert momentary insight into durable change. Your speech will be rarefied. Speak only when your words can construct rather than distract. A single clear sentence will scaffold a week of interior work for someone who needs it. Learn the economy of necessary speech and refuse the siren of constant explanation. Your quiet will teach more than elaborate sermons. Generosity will become selective and precise. Give without undoing limits. Offer support that amplifies self-sufficiency rather than dependency. When you teach, carry the capacity for leaving people with tools, not gratitude. When you love, do so in ways that enlarge autonomy and dignity. Remember that power without service atrophies. Your authority will be a form of service when it clears a path for another to walk. Use influence to create opportunity rather than prestige. Invest time in builders who match your patience and in practices that produce steady fruit rather than transient spectacle. When fear presents itself as counsel, check it against your inner witness. Fear will sometimes disguise prudence but often masks habit. Question the voice that asks you to shrink to make others comfortable. Answer instead with gestures that preserve the field of what you are growing. There will be moments that ask for public courage. Choose them with discipline and prayerful clarity. Not every demand for presence is a summons. Some are distractions dressed as importance. Align action to depth. A next sequence of images and sound awaits at the center of the screen. This is not a promotional afterthought. The clip is designed to carry certain textures that text alone cannot hold. Inside you will find a brief practice to tend breath and a short invitation to notice what resists realignment. Sit with it. Let it speak. If the video opens a doorway, let your response be practical. Subscribe not as a fad but as a promise to yourself. Turn on notifications so that further teachings arrive reliably. Doing so simply builds a channel for receiving disciplined guidance. It is an act of covenant with your own path. Finally, translate what you are into ordinary life. Locate one person whose day you can steady this week. Offer a deliberate act that plants possibility rather than extinguishes hope. That single act will be evidence of the work you have been given to the steward. Go now to the video at the center of your screen. Watch in a room where you can be still. Let what follows deepen what has already begun. Make a small pledge afterward and let that pledge be your measure for the coming season. Move with humility and resolve and observe how faithful action remakes the ordinary into the sacred.